conversation. If we can sort of kind of wrap our minds around this mess over here, right? However that got illustrated. And remember, this is how I resolve this for myself in my world that works for me. Take from it what works for you. If you don't want to be afraid of this conversation, here's how I am not afraid of it. If it works for you, use it. If it doesn't, then don't. It has to work for you, because just because Tonya says, oh, well, who the hell is Tonya, right? At some point it won't, you can't have it be somebody else's. It has to work for you. If the whole thing doesn't work, take the pieces that do. If none of it does, throw it out and go find another one, or continuing with whatever you're doing, right? These are how these dynamics work. So let's go back to the we conversation, right? Can we create artificial intelligence that would do X, Y, and Z? Well, we, as the creator elements that we are, that are capable of creating, that's the very essence that allows us to create things into form, right? That last. Oh, pause. We have to address one more issue. I forgot about this. This one's a good one. So we also have to understand how programs work with their their countermeasures. Anything that doesn't have the creative element in it has a natural self-destruct mechanism to it. And this is how we know this. Let's look at ourselves, right? In order to pass on from material reality, you have to be able to know yourself beyond the material, beyond the physical. If we only know ourselves, because this is a conceptualized reality, if we only know ourselves as a physical form, when the physical form dies, we know ourselves to be dead. It's not punishment, it's just that simple. Those are how the dynamics work. If we can conceive of ourselves as beyond the physical body, an aspect of us can conceive of ourselves as continuing after the physical body is gone, right? Pretty simple energetic dynamics when we can understand the subtleties. If we're able to harness that creative element, which is essentially the same thing as knowing yourself beyond the physical, it's saying there's something else that I am. I don't know what it is, right? But there's something else that I am, because I can talk about my body. I can be aware of my body. So what am I if I'm aware of my body, right? It must not be my mind, because I'm aware of my thoughts. We can think about our thoughts. I can't be my emotions because I'm aware of my emotions. As soon as you become aware of something, you're not it. And this keeps going and going and going, folks. If you're uncomfortable with change, you get okay being uncomfortable, because your identity shifts very rapidly on these evolutionary journeys. And you got to be okay letting go with what you thought you were, because it's going to shift. And that means your whole world changes, because your world is shaped by what you thought you were, right? Everything that you're seeing is based on what you used to believe. Remember that there's that gap. It speeds up, right? As an aside, of course. And so if what we create, if what we consider, if what we conceptualize, right? Because creating is first about imagining, right? We have to be able to imagine it, to visualize it, to conceptualize it. If that isn't connected to the field, if it doesn't have the creative element within it, it has a natural self-destruct to it, because if it doesn't have the creative element within it, it is of the material, or we kind of loop the virtual and we kind of break the matrix up to material and virtual, because they do operate a little bit differently. But without material elements imbued with the creative element, or virtual elements imbued with a creative element, there's sort of this natural self-destruct mechanism to them. Because what happens, it's the self-protect, self-destruct mechanism. They're countermeasures to each other. This is best illustrated, we're going to love this one, in the program of privilege. Privilege. Because privilege seeks to protect itself, it has to, because privilege can only exist in contrast to not privilege. There's no way to be privileged if something else is not. And on the surface, the program appears to be imbalanced, that the benefit always goes to who we would consider to be privileged. But when you understand dynamics, a program can't be imbalanced, so there must be a countermeasure. There's a very powerful countermeasure to privilege, and it's a self-destruct mechanism. because you can't have an imbalanced system, and anything that seeks to preserve itself is of the self, because that which is of creation never seeks to preserve itself, because it knows itself as everything. And if you're trying to protect the self, there's a natural self-destruct code that's written into those programs. Bing. That's why there's always a cost to privilege. We can talk about that later. Back to the whole conversation.